Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 6 of a running reunion for the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I am excited to bring on one of my dear friends, someone who joined us a few years ago on the podcast. And he was someone I was at the time just bowled over that he said, yes, he would come on. And years later, he is a good friend of mine. And he is going to share with you today a story that he told me back in November that is unbelievable and just such a cool thing that happened to him. It's really going to inspire you. It's going to give you a bit of a laugh too. He's a psychologist, so you're also going to get that little dose of energizing and just validation that we're all doing okay. And so I'm excited. Without any further ado, welcome my dear friend Guy Winch to the show. Thank you to UCAN for sponsoring this episode of Running Reunion for the Running for Real podcast. I am proud and excited to have been working with UCAN since 2012. It is my favorite go-to fuel and source. I have been using it in races for many years, and I was very excited last year when they came out with UCAN Edge. Now, it's not just me who loves UCAN Edge. UCAN Edge was voted by Runner's World as one of the best foods to eat during a run. It has these slower acting carbs that are easier to digest and will keep your blood sugar levels stable. Now, UCAN Edge comes in strawberry, banana, and orange flavors. It's this in this convenient portable pouch that is going to put super starch in your hand. It is what I'm going to be using in all my races upcoming. It has this delicious fruit flavor. It goes down really easy. It's really easy to enjoy, and it's going to mean you have no spikes, no crash. It's also trusted by the pros like Sarah Hall and Emma Bates. Emily Sisson all use UCAN for their races. So thank you again to UCAN for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You can use code TINAUCAN. That's Tina UCAN at ucan.co to go get yourself 20% off there. That's code Tina UCAN at ucan.co. Guy Winch, my dear friend, I am excited to welcome you back to the Running for Real podcast for this running reunion. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's so great to be back with you.
Although not in person. I wish I was with you in person right now. We soon, hopefully. We were so lucky. When was that? I last saw you in November. Was it?
Yeah, we've been able to squeeze in some quality time despite the pandemic.
I think. Yes, I know. Two times I've seen you in the pandemic, and I just want to share with the listeners publicly how just every time I leave you, I feel so fulfilled and just happy and just content. So thank you for being a special friend in my life, because I'm so excited to have you here, because I want to gobble up all the time with you I can, because I just love you to death. So
well, the feeling is mutual, so good.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so with that said, some listeners, as you were last on the show in 2018, December 2018, for those who maybe haven't been listeners since then, who are you and where does your passion lie?
I am Guy Winch. I'm a psychologist. I'm an author, a speaker. I have my own podcast called Dear Therapists, which is live therapy sessions. And my passion is really in getting people to prioritize their emotional health and give them tools to do that with and concepts to understand it with. And that's my passion, to really get people to focus on that aspect of their well-being.
Yes. And that's how we first connected. Actually, my psychologist at the time, my sports psychologist, Evie, who the community knows, she's a massive fan of your work, and she sent me your stuff. And then somehow I got you to respond to an email, and then we became friends and went from there. So I'm always thankful to Evie for first pointing your work out to me, because it just spoke to me. And from there we became, the rest was history. So first I want to ask you, you've had a tough year, a tough few years, and there's been a lot of ups and downs for everyone. But in terms of you, how are you really?
So right now you're catching me at a kind of a good time. Just for example, one of the reasons we connected a lot is because I love running, and I love it as, it's something that I do, but it's also, I'm a fan of the sport. And so to me, that was always like, oh, wow, this is my number one sport that I'm a fan of is running. It's not football. It's not team sports. It's running. And so that's always been really exciting. And I've always had so many injuries that it's something that I can only do between injuries kind of thing. I've had I was hit by a car many years ago and told I should never run because I can just really cause some damage to my spine. And I interpreted that to mean you got to do it very cautiously. So, but you're catching me now at a time where I've been able to get back to running more and remind myself of why I love it and how much it makes me feel better and how much I miss it when I'm not able to do it as consistently and as well. And so I'm actually now really high on running a bit.
Well, I actually didn't know that. You haven't mentioned that little tidbit.
I know, because it's only been a few months. I saw you, I think, in November, whenever it was, and it was after that that I started to okay, no, let's just do it consistently and cautiously and build cautiously, because that's the problem each time, of course. So yeah, so far so good.
Okay, that's great. And what about in everything else?
In everything else, it has been, it's been a couple of busy years for me. I'm actually in a good place in the sense that I think that one of the legacies of the pandemic is that people are much more open to listening.
You see that across the board?
I see that across the board, as you know, but I'll just mention I got invited to speak to the UK government and give them my recommendations for emotional and mental health policies they should institute across the UK. That was that I'm not sure would have happened before, and I'm going down to Washington, D.C. to speak to a branch of the U.S. government in a couple of weeks for a similar request. So it's like I'm just hearing from more and more institutions, politicians, and well as individuals that, people have been through so much that they're much more aware that, hey, this emotional health part, this mental health is kind of important.
Mm-hmm. So you're seeing it at the top, which will then trickle down, in various ways. Well,
actually, no, I'm seeing it across the spectrum. I'm seeing it at the top, which to me is the most resistant. So if companies and governments have started to think they're the last in line. The individuals have started doing that before. Yeah. But certainly over this pandemic, when I'm talking to companies, when I'm talking to groups, when I'm talking to my patients or to individuals, almost everyone, even the people that were poo-pooing, mental health, whatever, therapy, whatever, are realizing when you get stressed and anxious enough, that can impact you. And I'm like, you think? Good. I'm glad we're on that page now.
You're like, yeah, I've been saying this for years. Yeah. No, that's, I know we've talked about this before. And you shared what I was assuming was going to be your high moment already. So maybe I'm going to flip the order a bit around. Would that have been the high moment you were going to share with us? A high moment over the last, since December 2018?
I did let the cat out of the bag. I wish I could say, no, there's a higher moment, but really, there is not. That was a career high moment for me.
Yeah.
Obviously, to literally be at 10 Downing Street. It was the first in-person speaker since the pandemic that they've had. And really just sitting there with all, dozens and dozens of policymakers who are actually interested, not lip service. So you could see on their, if you don't see them, it's one thing. You're in the room with them, you can see they're interested. They want to do something. That was so heartening and so exciting, so that was definitely, and I'm sorry, I let the cat out of the bag early, but it is that exciting that it was hard to keep in. But yes, that was such a moment. It was significant, for me. And then they even contacted me later and said they're starting to institute some policies based on those recommendations. So that, that is just oh, well, great.
Let's talk about that for a second. Well, firstly, I want to get the listeners to think about the fact I have heard the full story of this, and it is incredible. I know you can't share the whole thing, but just the fact of imagining Guy knocking on the door, which is what you had to do, literally knocking on the door and be like, hello. Yeah.
Can I just say that was one of those moments where I thought, oh, this can end poorly, because they literally, when you get there, they just said, just walk up to number 10, that famous door, and knock on it. And I'm like, aren't there snipers? I mean, is that what you're supposed to be doing? So I literally walked up to am I being punked? Is it somebody going to take this the wrong way? And you just knock on the door. And well, obviously they answer the door, but it did feel very casual. But I do have to say about the UK government, and that's the whole philosophy of why 10 Downing Street is a row house, rather than this big, impressive domicile, because they want regular people to feel unintimidated, to feel like this is their house too, that they can come and be equals there. And so that is part of the philosophy, which I really do appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then I guess that's such a good example you said about, it's one thing to do the talk, to be able to say I spoke at 10 Downing Street, but to hear down the road that they are actually implementing, I mean, that's got to feel good to know that it wasn't just wow, that was really cool. And then 2 months later, oh, what did that guy do again? What did he, to know that, tell us a bit about your thoughts there.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's a career highlight because, when I was just a therapist in an office for many, many years doing the one-on-one thing. No, but I'm saying that my impact had the reach of one person an hour, two if it were a couple, like that kind of thing. So it's very limited, the impact I can have. And then when I started writing books and giving talks, then I realized, oh, wow, then now I can reach thousands of people. And then with talks, now I can reach millions of people. But, with this, it's like, wow, maybe I can impact, in some small way or, start the ball rolling in some small way over something that can really be good for the entire nation. Yeah. And just to have that privilege and to be given that opportunity is not something I would have ever dreamt that would happen. And so I just feel like, wow, that was just just so incredibly gratifying. That's what I'm saying. It's a career highlight. I don't know what would surpass it.
We will see. I'm sure there's some more along the way, and I'll be right there as your biggest cheerleader to cheer you on when it happens. Is there anything else? I said it's been coming up on 3.5 years since you were last on the show. Are there any other moments before that were something high you'd want to share?
As a highlight, there were many. There were many smaller. I think moments that happened. I think that one of them, just a personal one. Are we okay with personal ones?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so for me, this was immensely, immensely significant. And that was that when the pandemic happened, I live in New York City in an apartment, and I thought, this is going to be months and months and months. It was clear it was going to be many, many, many months. And I was like, I'm not sure, a small apartment it's not even a small apartment, but it's an apartment, it's New York City. I have a identical twin brother, and and he lives in a house in the suburbs by fields, where the weather is even better. And so I went there, and he and I are incredibly close. He's the closest person to me, and we're best friends and always have been. And we had never had the opportunity to spend more than 10 days together as adults. And now we spent 6 months at the first, for the first wave. Every time there was a wave, there were more and more months we spent together. And then I came back to New York, and then I went back there for a while. So being able to just live with him as we did when we were kids was just the kind of opportunity. And I know there was a difficult pandemic for many people and for me in many other ways, but that felt like a gift that was really just nourishing in many ways and deeply so. Yeah,
thank you so much for sharing that. It's always nice to hear you reflect on that time, just on how special that was to get that time with someone so close to you. That's in a tough time, that's a one good thing that can come out of it. So thank you. What is something that made you smile today?
Well, it's early, so let me. and I've been seeing patients all morning, so not always the best opportunity to smile when you're dealing with people and their heartaches and their problems. One thing that made me smile today is I'll be going to the annual TED conference in a couple of weeks in Vancouver, and I looked at the speaker lineup, and it made me smile to see that one of my favorite athletes in the world, who's, let's guess, a runner, is going to be there. And I started plotting. You're not supposed to ask for selfies with celebrities when you go to these things. It's literally in the rules. You're not supposed to, but really? Sometimes people do, and they find creative ways to do that. But it's Alison Felix. And
Oh,
I
cool.
need to get a picture with Alison Felix. I'm not sure how we'll go about doing it, but I love her. I've followed her career since she was, an under 20, runner. Just meeting her would be a thrill. So when I saw that, I was smiling broadly, and I'm like, I have to come up with a plan.
I felt like that when I was going to that conference with Brene, which didn't turn out so good.
Right.
But I was very much doing the same thing.
Right.
Okay, what would you like to remind everyone listening to this today?
I would like to remind that there are two aspects to your well-being. There's the physical health and there's your emotional and psychological health. I separate emotional health from mental health because mental health is kind of once you have a diagnosis of something, once something's very wrong. Emotional health is all the stuff that precedes that, is just your general well-being. And there's so much we can do for our emotional health on a daily basis. You talk about so much of those things, about gratitude, about appreciation, about perspective. For example, when you did the marathon, last year, and you did it in the way that you wanted to do it and actually kind of enjoyed it in that way, it was like, oh, I was so thrilled, because it's so difficult for a competitive person to do that, to just be like, no,
when you talked about it before, how I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do it.
Yes, I was just thrilled. And it was like, yes, that's somebody seizing the moment and being present and doing the thing. Because, we always have to disengage our autopilot. Autopilot would have put you into competitive mode. It's a willful act, an intentional act to go against our natural, tide in that way. And so that's what emotional health is about a lot of the times. It's like catching yourself and doing the thing is important or right, even though it might be against the grain of what your quote unquote instinct or your habit is, or your want is to do. And so when I saw you pull that off, it was like, yes, this is amazing. This is exactly the kind of thing that I think people need to do more of.
Thank you. That's really kind. I knew you were proud of me afterwards, but it's nice to hear you say it now, reflecting back as an example of that. So thank you. Where can people go find you? You mentioned about Dear Therapist. Is it Dear Therapists or therapy? Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, we're two of them, so there's an answer.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yes. You mentioned that, so they can go find that. Where can they find you? And maybe mention a book or two.
So, Dear Therapist, just want to say one thing about that is it's live therapy sessions. We're both advice columnists. We bring someone in. We don't discuss the case beforehand, which is why it's a little anxiety-provoking for us. But we bring someone in, we read their letter, and then we do live therapy, really, a live session with them. They're not our patients per se, but we do this live session where you can literally hear what two therapists, and one client, sometimes a couple, what it's like in that room, and then we give them actionable advice, and they have to do it and get back to us within a week, and then we analyze that. So you really get a complete arc. That's wherever you get your podcasts, you can get that. My website is guywinch.com, WINCH, and you can get links to my books and my talks there. The book I would recommend to start with is Emotional First Aid, because it's just very practical tools for emotional health and for normative things. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you so much, Guy. I adore you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us, and can't wait for the listeners to say how much they appreciate you too.
Well, my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Hi, friends. Just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community, to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. I could talk to him all day, and sometimes I try to. Thank you so much for listening, my friends, to this Running Reunion episode. These Running Reunion episodes are every Wednesday, and you can check them out. You've also got the regular episodes on Fridays and Together Runs on Mondays. Did you try my Together Run in Maui yet? That was a really special one. I just also want to thank UCAN for sponsoring this episode. You can get 20% off to go get those Edge gels by going to ucan.co. That's ucan.co and use code TINAUCAN to get yourself 20% off. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you on Friday.